Hey Laura, can you hear me? You want to unclick your video and unmute yourself? Hi everybody, we'll be getting started in just a minute.
Hello, I'm having some trouble with my video. It says you cannot start your video because the host has stopped it.
Okay. I think in 1 second you should be able to do that.
Now it says that I am the host.
Yes. So we're gonna co-team the host. Hi.
There I am. Hi. Good to see you.
You too. So I'm Helene Timpone. We're talking about the program that I'm working on creating. I want to introduce everybody to Laura Slagle. She's been wonderful enough. We've known each other for quite a few years to host the training that you saw in the video that's coming up next week on the 29th that everybody's invited to. Laura owns Olive Lee Family Therapy Incorporated in Fresno. So we're going to be talking a little bit about the program together, and she's kind of going to do this interview style. And if you have any questions, please feel free to put in some questions as we go. So thanks for being here, Laura. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. I'm really excited to introduce you, Helene, to the Central Valley. I've known you for quite a while. We've connected kind of on a professional level with our work. And then also personally, because we're both adoptive parents and just good friends at this point.
Yes.
So that's been kind of neat. And I'm excited that you're going to be bringing some more services to the Valley that might be helpful. And I'd like to sort of ask you a few questions, if that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Questions that maybe people might have about what you're doing.
Great.
Okay. That way they can get to know you a little bit better and kind of know what you're bringing to the table. So, what is this new project that you have in the works?
Well, I've been in private practice for quite some time, and I've been able to provide services as I've chosen to provide them. So through not collecting insurances, I've been able to create programs in that I work with families intensively, in that they can call me anytime they need to, that they're having 2 to 3 sessions a week, that I'm flying out or they're flying in to work with me, and that happens 2 to 3 times over a course of a year. And the hard part is that access to those services are really dependent upon whether or not you have the financial means to do it. The hard part, I think, that you and I both know as adoptive parents is that it is so hard to know that other people really can understand what you're going through. You know, that every time you call and you say to one of your family members and you're talking about, hey, listen, my child just did this or my child just did that. Then your family is saying, well, you got to get control over that kid. And, you know, this shouldn't be happening. And you have to make sure that you do what it takes. And, you know, so you get all of this advice from people that don't really truly understand what's going on in the adoption. So being able to provide the services is amazing because there are adoption funds that a lot of people are not aware of. And that also give me the ability to provide the services and more that I would typically do in my private practice. So I think we're talking about Senate Bill 163 that says if you have a child that has been adopted domestically in California and they are at risk of out-of-home placement or have been in an out-of-home placement, that you're eligible for these additional funds and these additional programs.
Wow. So I know I can really relate to that, having everybody trying to give me advice and tell me what to do, especially family, friends, all of that you were talking about, and just feeling like nobody really understood. And I think that is what I've known of you over the years. That is how what you do is different. Like you
Mhm.
said, you've not been using insurance and that kind of thing. You've been using other means to really, um, really work with people from the standpoint of really understanding what their needs are.
Mhm.
And
Doing
so
what I
is
know works.
what works, right? Because you've been through it yourself. You've
Mhm.
actually been through it yourself.
Right.
Having a professional background is one thing, but I think having that lived that life yourself adds another dimension. So
Yeah.
what would you say are kind of your qualifications for this? And then what is the premise behind or the foundation, theoretical foundation of your work that you're also going to be bringing in this program?
So I think I can best describe that through an experience, right? Is that if you have and you've been through trauma, it impedes your nervous system. When it impedes your nervous system, what happens is that our ability to get to calm, our ability to put on the brakes, our ability to delay impulses, or to regulate and have clear thinking, or to not get upset or not have emotional outbursts is something that is within our control. But when you've had a trauma history, then all of those things become really difficult, and getting to that calm state can be a mere impossibility. I look at it kind of this way, is that part of what has made my private practice so successful is that I'm getting a thing saying that we're getting a bad echo. So I'm trying to lower this, maybe lower on your end as well, the volume, and that should get rid of your echo. So the difficult part is that we as parents have our own history, right? And through our own history, we have learned, and we have all of these imprints that say, children are to be seen and not heard, that children are supposed to be there and do as we say to do. They're not supposed to disrespect us. And then you have these children in our home that have all of those issues because of their own trauma history from adoptions, and maybe medical traumas and all of that. But specifically today, we're talking more about adoptions. What happens is that when their issues come together with our issues, our ability to work with them and start to get their nervous system regulated becomes almost impossible. One of my favorite stories with my oldest child, and I should say that I didn't look to adopt. I just kind of had this 16-year-old that bounced in my lap, and God said, "Congratulations, Lynn, you're the proud mom of a 16-year-old." And I could do, in my practice, or as a therapist or an LCSW, I could deal with angry teens all day long because I was that acting out angry teen. I'd be like, "You and I are going to be best friends, and that's good." And I would move on. But when that then comes into your house, well, then all the triggers come, right? Because I'm here to do this for you. And why are you acting out? I'm here to rescue you, and I'm here to love you, and I'm here to do all these wonderful things. One of my most profound experiences with my daughter was that it was prom. I was so excited. We're getting ready for prom, and I have a camera, and I'm like, "Okay, let's take pictures." And all of a sudden she grabs her boyfriend and she's like, "Thomas, protect me from her." And I'm like, why in the world would you need protection from me? Like, I'm here to rescue you. I've loved you, and I've been taking care of you for the past 2 years and all of that other stuff. But I got triggered. So my own history and my own rejection gets triggered. And what do? I became like an adolescent. Whatever, have fun. I don't really care, right? Feeling victimized after everything I've done for you. Why would you do this for me? But now I'm learning, right? I'm learning the process, and I'm like, all right, my stuff is in this. A couple of deep breaths, and I'm like, what's going on, Helene? Well, I feel rejected. And in my rejection, because when we feel rejected, we regress, right? So I go back to my adolescence, because that's where the good majority of our adolescence, our rejection comes from, is our adolescence. And I take a couple of deep breaths and I go out and I'm like, you know what? That was just my stuff. This has nothing to do with you. I felt rejected. It's not about you. It's about me. I'm so sorry. Take whatever pictures you want to take. If you don't want to take pictures, don't take pictures. Do whatever feels good for you. And she said, and she turned around, that moment was quite profound because she said to me, you know, when I was home, my mom would be beating me and ripping off my clothes and calling me a slut and a whore, and my little sisters would be taking pictures. So then we look at like, wow, it wasn't me, or is the camera, right? And my daughter's trauma happened so much after her verbal state that she could tell me that. And then, you know, we're working through the process together and she's learning and I'm learning. So we're able to process that, and not all kids can process that. And so it gets hard, and we have to become kind of these people who look and become sensory detectives to try and figure out what those triggers are. But it's always some sort of a trigger. We may not be able to identify it, but there's a trigger underneath. And I can't see that if I'm stuck in all of my belief systems and in my own history and my own stuff.
I really like that example because I like how you took responsibility for your own stuff, which is not taking blame, it's just taking responsibility. And then you focused on your connection with her. You know, that was more important than the pictures.
Yes.
So we have kind of a saying around here at Olive Leaf: focus on the behavior, lose the relationship. Focus on the relationship, lose the behavior.
Exactly.
And that's kind of what you were doing. Yeah.
Exactly. This is what we do, right? You have the counseling sessions. We take our kids to counseling and we're like, okay, fix them, but we can't create a healing environment. So parents have to be willing to get in there and do the hard work too. I mean, to see if there's our own triggers that are getting caught up in this. So, you know, being able to provide wraparound services means that I can go in and I can regulate the entire house. Well, mom, I can get you regulated. Dad, I can help you, you know, because dads usually sometimes are the ones out working, and then they come home, dad rocks, mom sucks, you know, or whatever the scenario is. But getting both parents regulated, getting them to help support one another when there are two parents, or getting, you know, that single parent regulated so that they can regulate the kid, and we can create repetition after repetition and start rewiring the brain, because that's really what we're after, you know, is we're working on fixing this nervous system that causes all of these behaviors.
So this sounds great. Some of this may be new for some people, just the perspective that you're giving on it, which, well, I know we'll talk more about it maybe when we finish talking about this program, but you're going to have a kind of a workshop coming up in person where they can learn a little bit, because this may be a totally new concept for some people. So maybe they can learn a little bit more about it then. And we'll give some more details about that in a few minutes. But so the perspective you're coming from sounds refreshing, and this is what you've been doing in your practice. What have been the obstacles to that? And, you know, how is this going to be done differently to overcome those obstacles?
Obstacles. Obstacles generally tend to be the funding. It tends to be parents that are willing to do something different. I think I built my private practice on the percentage of parents that have just tried everything else. I was lucky enough that I studied with a person that was kind of controversial in the beginning of this, that, you know, we said, no, if the child's trying to control you, you have to try and control that kid and get that child in line. And little by little, you know, our entire, through all the neuroscience that we found out, we have been swinging over to a more love-based perspective. And I say love-based in that we're working on physiology to help calm and regulate. So we're seeing that, and we're seeing that these old punitive methods just further impede the nervous system. So if I say to you, you know, you're not doing what I need you to do, you're grounded, what I'm doing is I'm then stressing you out and I'm more impeding your nervous system. So some of our belief systems tend to be really difficult and tend to get in the way. What I can say is that, through the years, I've worked with numerous families, and the families that have, and I will say this only with the families that have lasted with me through an entire year, they came through and the behaviors in their home have dropped by over 60%, by 60% or more. That's not to say that I haven't had parents that are like, you know what, this is too hard, I can't do this, and I won't do it. So I think the barriers is finding the resources, being able to work through that. And so going back to the Senate bill, if people give me a ring, there are certain areas in certain counties that are really open to providing the services, and it's 1, 2, 3. There are other counties that there are some, issues that are surrounded. So if they give me a call, then I can see where you've adopted from. It doesn't have to be the county that you're in. So if you're in Fresno, like I have a lady that's working from another county, and she's going to get the services because she adopted from somewhere other than Fresno. So we can get the services in there or work with the county if it's not something that has been already. So if they give me a call, we can see what we need to do. And I'll just say the number here again, so in case you haven't written it down, it's 757-818-7403.
Okay. And I just put that in the little chat box as you said it. Oh, except for I don't think I sent it to. Okay, I'll do. I think I sent it to us rather than everyone. I'll get that going. But anyway, well, that sounds great. So I wonder if some people may be wondering what this program would actually look like in their home. Like, is this therapy? Is this something else? What would it really look like?
Mm-hmm. Well, there's a lot of me in this. So I'm going to be coming into the home. This way I can observe, what a parent would report to me and what I'll see. Or some parents are always worried about, when you come to the house, my kid's going to be able to pull it together and they'll never know what's really going on. But through the years, I can see that little kind of stuck state and where they hold their breath and then they walk away, and I know that that's bigger when I'm not there. So anyway, being able to be in the home, work with the family, say, okay, mom, dad, let's try this. So being able to model different interventions, then having a whole educational component where parents will be completely immersed in this, hoping to build a group of parents that can then support each other and work with one another, so that they don't feel so alone. I think that's a major factor. And then I'm going to look at, are you stressed out from trying to cook dinner? So if you are stressed out trying to get dinner together, well, then we're going to send some of those meal kits to your house so that it becomes a no-brainer. And working with our sister agency, that has been a major success. I can't tell you how many families, and I didn't think that it would be such a big thing, but how many families are so relieved just to take that off of the plate. And then the kids and the parents are having a lot of fun and connecting through being able to put these meal kits together and cook them together. So it really is going to depend, it's going to have those major components, and then individually looking at the family and seeing what they need. And then we'll have some coaching that will come in, that will be a support, that will, become the teamer of the house. They're having a bad day, kiddos throwing a fit, you know what, let's go over here, mom, go take some deep breaths, and they'll be doing some modeling as well.
So let's talk a little bit about, this all sounds so wonderful. People are probably wondering, okay, how do we get access to this? And I know I saw a question come in. We'll get to that in a minute too. So what are the steps? Like if there's a parent or if the therapist is wanting to refer someone, what are the steps to take to do that? I know you already mentioned your phone number. Is that it? Do they just call you?
Yeah, just give me a call and we'll see what needs to be done. And then I will, depending on the county that they're coming from, we'll give them step-by-step instructions. It unfortunately, getting these, getting this funding does take a lot of work. That's the hard part, is that it's there, but it is a lot of, work for the parents.
Okay. And you already kind of mentioned who would qualify for this, what it takes to qualify.
Mhm.
Did you want to just run down that list one more time, or?
You're an adoptive parent, you've adopted from California. Your child is at risk of out-of-home placement, and maybe you're looking at RTCs, or they've been in an RTC, or they've been 5150 and placed in a hospital, or they're looking at being placed in a hospital, all of those kinds of things. So if they're looking at being placed outside of the home or have been placed outside of the home. Am I missing anything, Laura, you think?
I think that's, yeah, well, the only other part I know that I've heard from you before is that they need to either have AAP, Adoptive Assistance Program, or be eligible for it. Like sometimes you can defer. I know we talked about that with our son. We were not considering taking it at first, so they talked about deferring it to later. So that, which brings up another question. I know people that I've talked to always wonder, oh, if it's paid for by AAP, am I gonna, then I won't have the AAP money anymore? Is that what happens? And it's not, correct?
Right, so it's not, it's, you keep the amount of money that you're receiving, and there are additional funds that they would, that the program would receive in order to be able to provide the service.
Perfect. That's just a qualifying factor.
Yes.
Okay. I think that's all of my questions. Let's look at, I know we had a question over here. This is a good one because.
And open it up to other Q&A.
Yes, if anybody wants to, do you want them to, we'll answer this question, but do you want them to type in their question or raise their hand and you'll open it up, or how do you want to do that?
I'm just typing the question because otherwise there's another piece of technology that I may not be so confident in.
Okay. So are you going to make kids do I'm sorry, I can't talk, worksheets?
My style, probably not. It will depend on what the kid needs. If I think that that's something that would work and doing some journaling would be good, then yeah, we'd add to it. This is not a catch-all program. All of these kids are not the same. The same is that my nervous system has been impeded. I have a hard time regulating, therefore I have behaviors. And so that part we do. My hope too, at some point will be to start, because this is, I need to say, a startup, right? So my hope is to be able to bring kids together. There was a point where we used to do camps for families and these kids, not only like are the parents feeling really alone, but these kids would get together and they would start saying, okay, so were you adopted or is there something wrong with your brain? And they were all feeling really connected by the end of it. And I've had some adoptive groups where I've had kids say, when my mom leaves the house, it feels like she's not going to the grocery store, that she's leaving and she's never coming back. And another kid to be able to say, you feel that way, I feel that way too. So we will have different types of programs that will help these kids benefit from one another, as well as the parents. They'll do whatever it takes to create that healing.
Is in that light, is there, you mentioned doing whatever it takes for the parents too. Is there some kind of, is there a book people can read? Is there some way they can learn more about this, or will you be teaching? How will that work?
So there will be some education and training from Brian Post. The other thing that you can do, just to understand maybe a little bit more where I'm working from, is if you go to www.functionaldiscipline.com, You can pull up a audio that I just did. You are going to have to put your name and email in there. The other thing that you can do is really honestly just Google my name, Helene Timpone, LCSW. I have more stuff out there that I've done over the years that I don't even know what it is or where it is at this point, but it's there.
Okay, I put that in the chat so that people have the spelling and everything. And we're open to other questions too, if anybody wants to type in more questions. And would you like to tell us, Helene, a little bit more about the workshop on July 29th?
Yeah, I'm really excited about it. I'm really glad that Laura's going to host it at her Olive Leaf, which is, I think, do you want to just put your address back in there? So it'll be on the 29th. We'll be doing it from 6 to 8:30 p.m. I will have refreshments and things to snack on if you'd like, but we're going to talk a little bit about what happens when you're dealing with these difficult behaviors and how often we get caught up in power struggles, because I've dealt with probably the top 10% of the most difficult kiddos. We'll talk about some of those bigger behaviors too, like holding parents hostage is one of the biggest ones I get, is that kids will say to parents, hey, if you don't do this, then I'm gonna break up everything in the house. Or if you don't do this, then I'm not going to school tomorrow. Or just the flat out defiant state of, you know what? No, I'm not gonna do it. Go ahead and make me. And you're standing there like, well, I'm not gonna pick up a middle teenager and throw them in the car and try and get them to school because physically I can't anymore. So dealing with those types of more difficult behaviors. I mean, 2.5 hours is really not much to crack, but I can give some solid core, how-to skills in the process.
Sounds good.
Good.
So we have a quiet group today. Oh, here's one. Do you pull an extended family? Good question.
It is. If that is a necessity and that is what will take for the parents and the family to feel supported, absolutely. I've also pulled in, birth moms that are really struggling to say, I don't want you to be like me, so whatever it takes to help that kiddo heal. And yes, you can have all of the doggies that you need to have. I've had mastiffs, so I've had big sloppy dogs and I love them. So we're good. Dogs are good.
The dogs are great, but the family thing, that could be a really, really good idea, because we talked earlier about how our families are giving us advice and telling us, well, you just need to spank them, or you just need to take away everything from him and make him earn it back. Or, I've been told all these things over the years. And if those people are also our support system, you may have grandpa or somebody who is, from a different era. And if that's your support system though, and that person may even love your child, they don't know. So it would be great if they're there at times and, you're able to work with them too.
Yeah, absolutely. That is really difficult, because then you end up feeling really alone, because you're not going to give those people a call because they're not going to understand. And then they're going to see you're doing what with your kid?
Yeah. And so will this involve, how intrusive will this be? I know that's a question I've been asked. Will this involve a whole bunch of people in my home? I know some people have worked with other TBS or RAP programs, or, other situations where there's a different person every day in the home, that kind of thing.
It is, and it can be a lot. So depending on, if this is something that is dysregulating the family, then we're not going to have a ton of people in the house. I'm not going to have I've seen like that there's a parent coach, there's a child coach, there's somebody else that's coordinating, there's, I don't know, a multitude of people in and out. And no, that I don't see as beneficial. The idea is to help the parent de-stress so that the parent can get in there. And because what we're also talking about too is we're talking about children that really need to be able to connect and work through attachment issues, right? So we're not looking to have your children attached to other professionals. We want the child to attach to the adult that's the caregiver. And we want to take those barriers out of the way. And so 50 people in your house is not going to be productive by any means. I think we had a question from.
Yeah, so it sounds like you're saying that the number of people will be enough, like if there's more help needed, more help can be found, but it's not going to be just throwing a bunch of people into,
Right.
Like you said.
This will be 100% curtailed to the family and what they need. This isn't a one size fits all.
Right. So this other question is one from a professional who is looking at kind of the logistics of how the funding will be done, which that's maybe a little more than we can explain here, but he's asking, I know you've been looking at meeting with the Department of Behavioral Health for Fresno County. Now I know you mentioned earlier, it depends on the county that the child is adopted from, because different counties have handled this differently. And you've been part of this same model in other counties?
Yeah, in Northern California, I can tell you that it probably 7 or 8 different counties.
Okay, and so, did it work differently with each county?
So, okay. Here's the confusing part is that when the person seeks to have these wraparound services or seeks to open up these AAP, the 163 funds, what happens is then that the parent is coming to a provider and saying, I want these services. The contract and the law is about the provider and the parent connecting. Then they go to the county of origin to access the funding, because the county of origin is supposed to be receiving the funding that these people need. In the past, how it's worked is that we've had some counties that are like, great, wonderful, want you to provide those services. We will send over the allocated funds directly to you. And it's 1, 2, 3. There are other counties that have said, no, we won't provide, we won't provide it. And then we've had to put it into appeal. And then once I don't know who looks at it at the deeper level, once they look at a deep level and they're seeing that it's funding between, again, the parent and the provider, then they are able to provide the funds. They're just not aware of it, it seems like. Or they have their own programs going and they don't know that outside of it, there can be other programs that provide that.
Yeah, I think you
That's
mentioned
unclear.
before that as part of that Senate bill, there's a part where it says that the parents can choose the provider.
Yes.
So that's what enables them to be able to appeal it. If because some counties do have their own contracted wraparound programs, and those are set up a little differently. Those are maybe good for certain people, but your program is very specialized for adopted children and adoptive families that have kind of exhausted other resources.
Exactly.
So it's not for everybody, just like the contracted programs are not for everyone.
Exactly.
Okay, and I think I know the answer to this question, but I'll ask you, is the training on the 29th going to be on Zoom for those out of state? Now, that's interesting.
We can absolutely stream it, I would imagine. we'll just have to take a look at how we can do that. Or
You
do it
know,
on
we
Zoom.
could, because the training, the workshop on the 29th is going to be informational, you know, about parenting these types of children. So
Yeah.
there may be people, even if they're not, you know, wanting services in our area, they may just be want to be there for the information.
Yeah, we can absolutely do that. If you email me at info@helenetimpone.com, we will make sure that we specifically get you the links that you need in order to attend that day.
Okay. Any other questions or other thoughts? Helene? Your email is info@helenetimpone.com.
Mhm.
Okay.
I think that's it, unless we have any other questions.
Okay, and I know you're the one gentleman who asked the little more complicated question. I don't want to minimize that. Those are good questions, but you're open to meeting with people separately too, if there's a complicated aspect, because you want to try and do whatever it takes to work this out.
Yeah, and we want to be able to work with the counties as well.
Okay. All right, that sounds great. I'm excited that you're here, or you're there right now, but that you will be here and
Yes,
providing these services.
me too. Laura, thank you so much for interviewing and providing the space and hosting everything. It's truly appreciated.
You're welcome. Looking forward to seeing you on the 29th.
Sounds good. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for coming.